Kashmir is currently under, sort of unprecedented restrictions today, and it's been more than 10 days now. All kinds of communication, including landlines, everything has been. I mean, Kashmir is not new to curfews, but the kind of restrictions which have been put with political leaders and everybody under house arrest, restrictions of movement, people facing a lot of inconvenience. How long do you think these restrictions are going to go on?
No, I think first of all, let me challenge this contention that this is not unprecedented. The restrictions this time are much milder than what they have been in preceding years.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Most of us have forgotten that mobile was introduced in India somewhere in mid-90s. And it was held back from being introduced in Jammu and Kashmir. Because the then governments felt that it would not be right to have a mobile service in India, in Jammu and Kashmir. It was many years later, in 2003, during the Vajpayee government, that the mobile service was introduced in Jammu and Kashmir. Now it's been suspended temporarily, but we have had times and we had governments which were averse to even introducing a mobile service in Jammu and Kashmir. Secondly, restrictions in the form of temporary suspension of internet or mobile service has happened virtually every year on momentous occasions like Independence Day, Republic Day, Eid festival for the last 30 years. And in spite of that, there have been incidents of violence, undesirable happenings. This time it was relatively, I would rather claim that this is one of the most peaceful Eid festivals we have had. Secondly, duration of restrictions has been longer in the past when there were Congress governments or Congress supported governments or UPA governments at the center, and there were Congress and National Conference governments in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which will now be a union territory after 31st of October. Again, this can be checked from the records. These restrictions were imposed only about a week or so preceding the Independence Day and the Eid. And let's also not forget that incidentally this time, Eid and the Independence Day happened very closely, following each other. Otherwise, on both these occasions we had. So, I think this is just because we are looking at it through the prism of our subconscious 370 abrogation. Otherwise, if you see per se, it would not stand the scrutiny of facts.
Not only mobile phone and internet connectivity is down and restriction on movement, but even landlines are down. When Afzal Guru was hanged, at that time also restrictions were imposed for around 10 days. But landlines were functioning, so people could connect with each other in some
Again, you are only, leave aside Afzal Guru. Why you are connecting it again and again with Afzal Guru, and that is why you are seeing it through the subconscious prism of these incidents. Otherwise, this has happened again and again, and besides that, it has happened for days together when there were long spells of violence in 2010. There were long spells of unrest during the Amarnath land agitation in 2008. There was a long spell of a protracted governor rule up to 1996. There were occasions when the governments of the day earned the dubious distinction, and you can note, of being known as curfew governments. The Farooq Abdullah government before 1984, and then the Ghulam Shah government, which was, formed or placed with defections from the National Conference, engineered by the Congress party through his brother-in-law. And that government also came to be. You can check the newspaper issues. I'm not saying so. The newspaper captions were saying curfew government. So absolutely not. De-link it with from Afzal Guru, de-link it from Article 370, and let's per se look at it. And then you would realize statistically we are not right.
So almost all key political leaders in Valley at least are under house arrest. Even those who are probably months old into politics are under house arrest. How long do you think this can continue? Incarceration of political leaders. What kind of message it sends to the people because they do represent people?
Now, let me answer that in two parts. Now, taking up the second part first. This expression incarceration is very subjective, so I hold objection to this. Sheikh Abdullah was behind the prison for more than a decade. And mind you, he was not under house arrest in the cool climes of Kashmir Valley, he was sent to Kodaikanal. It was not this government, it was Nehru's government. So where is the incarceration? Then shall we start the history of incarceration from Sheikh Abdullah's so-called incarceration? I mean the way you define it. That means the first incarceration in independent India was that of Sheikh Abdullah and not that of Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, who was in house arrest for 44 days without a charge sheet, without an FIR, without a reason being assigned. He was a member of parliament representing South Calcutta constituency. He was a former union minister. He was the national president of a national party called Bharatiya Janata Sangh. He enjoyed the privilege of extended a bare minimum protocol. And the apparent allegation put out in your newspaper itself was that he had tried to cross into Jammu and Kashmir without a permit. You have hundreds of nakas even around Noida. If somebody tries to break it, you push him back. He could have been pushed back. He came from Amritsar via Pathankot. But a Public Safety Act was imposed and was mercilessly thrown into a solitary detention in a 2-room apartment. And you can check all this. You can check all this. You can also check the meaning of incarceration from dictionary and see where it applies, how better. This is incarceration I am talking about. 44 days. He was ailing. He had varicose veins. Note down the diagnosis I am giving you, which was ailing. He developed fever. He had infection. The then doctor attending to him said he had developed pleurisy. He was started on streptomycin. You can note the name of the drug. Later on, an injection was given to which he reacted and he died. He was not given adequate medical aid. He was by a design imprisoned after he had crossed into the territory of Jammu and Kashmir. He could have been held back even in Punjab. Why? Because if he had been held back proximal to the entry point, then his lawyers could have lodged a habeas corpus petition and got him released. And if house arrest of Sheikh Abdullah later on could happen in Kodaikanal, house arrest at your, place of residence or in the same town as a preventive detention for a few days would not qualify to be described as incarceration.
The one obvious question for anybody is the manner. The way the entire country has been hoodwinked, and let's not get into the word hoodwinked, but we got Lieutenant Dhillon to address a press conference creating a facade that there was an imminent danger to Amarnath Yatra, and that's why we are trooping in 45,000 forces. So entire country was given, so it was a diversion appears. A governor was telling that nothing is going to happen, take my word. I mean, these are institutions, they are mechanisms. I mean, they were deployed for a diversion in a democracy, world's largest democracy, and then not giving enough time for the opposition even to read the bill. I'm not sure, I mean, how many BJP MPs have read the reorganization bill in toto. And we have passed in a span of, it was introduced at 11 and passed by 8 p.m. I mean,
No,
The manner.
can I respond to it? Because I got your point. First of all, the expression hoodwink is being used on the assumption that was what said was a lie. What makes you assume that it was a lie to say that there was some imminent threat happening from Pakistan, or which still exists? You are without evidence challenging the version of the security agencies. We, as responsible citizens, leave aside office bearers, have every reason to trust when the security sources say that there is a huge imminent danger. We have discovered IEDs, we have discovered those guns, whatever, and the danger still exists. So that apart. Secondly, do you expect that Parliament represents the people of India? The bill was brought in the Parliament, it was debated, it was passed. The Parliament had representation of all the political parties and all the political thoughts. I think that we have a reason that to believe. And the bill was passed as per the due process and procedure. Not only that, somebody even went to the court, and the court also has the same view. So now, do we accept the version that Parliament of India is wrong, Supreme Court of India is wrong, and just because we believe we have been hoodwinked, we are wrong? And then what is the definition of time not given? There have been occasions when bills have been passed in 2 hours. It is amazing that a bill which has been passed through due process, procedure, which is debated upon, which is voted upon, and there was vote by division, 2/3 in one house and 3/4 one house. So that means we are actually challenging, questioning, and though I would not use words loosely like incarceration, hoodwink, but if you were in my place, you would say abusing the supremacy of Parliament of India.
What are we looking ahead? What is it that worries you so much in Kashmir at this moment, that we continue to have the clampdown, we continue to have almost all political leaders under preventive detention? When can we expect these restrictions to ease, the political leaders to be released? What exactly worries you? What is the road ahead?
Nothing worries me. I am relieved. This is one of the most peaceful Eid festivals, one of the most peaceful Eid Independence Days in the last 3 decades. We must compliment the people of Jammu and Kashmir, the administration of Jammu and Kashmir. A. B. Detention part, how long it will happen. As I said, A part, of course, is nothing unusual. There have been longer detentions than longer. You, as a journalist, enjoy the freedom of asking this question. I, as an office bearer of the government, do not enjoy the freedom to answer it, because the answer will lie with the Home Ministry. And there are inputs, security inputs, intelligence inputs coming moment to moment, to which you and I are not privy. So that is why you have the freedom to ask a question without being privy. But I don't enjoy the same freedom to respond without being privy to those inputs. So those decisions are taken with highly discreet and a very, very meticulous deliberation, which can happen only on the part of those who are privy to that. So they'll decide.
The Prime Minister has spoken, the Home Minister has spoken on this issue, and the Home Minister has twice said that the politics of Jammu and Kashmir has been appropriated by 3 families. Right now, these political leaders are under preventive detention. They will be let out some or the other time. A lot of them are quite young politicians, including Sajad Loan, Shah Faisal, even Omar Abdullah is a young political leader. Do you see a future for them in Kashmir politics?
No. Actually, I don't see any future for them. And they are also realizing that their political innings has come to an end. It's only some sections of media which want to see some future so that, the story carries on. The story is ended. It is these handful of politicians who have survived, thrived, flourished in an atmosphere of vacuum with 8%, 10% voter turnout, which enabled them to make it to Lok Sabha. which enabled them to make it to state assembly, which enabled them to form state governments generation after generation for 3-4 generations, and thus perpetuated their dynasty rule. And then they try to make the whole world believe, whole country believe that, look here, if we are not there, there is nobody here to take charge of the political responsibility. I am sure, and I say this with confidence, a common man, regardless of whether he is a Hindu or a Muslim, in the streets of Srinagar is rejoicing in the heart of hearts. It's a wheel of fear which is preventing him. Just let the atmosphere open up and let the enormous benefits which had, eluded him because of Article 370, also now that the central laws because of the UT are going to be applicable, are realized by him. Because I think if we are objective observers, we should first accept and understand that we are now dealing not with these 3-4 names that you are talking about, who are untested. 1 or 2 names have never even contested an election or proved their representative character. Let's first understand that we are dealing with 3rd generation Indians, which include 3rd generation Kashmiris, post 1990 generation. 70% of the population is below the age of 40. It is they who would determine the course of future for India and for Jammu Kashmir. The majority of Kashmiri population, which as I said is below the age of 40, which is post 90 born, is highly aspirational, is very well connected, is globally connected, very well informed. And I sometimes tend to believe, and I am saying this again not without evidence, that an average Kashmiri youth is more aspirational perhaps even compared to his peers and counterparts in other parts of the country. And I will tell you why I am saying so. Every year you have a topper or one of the first 20s in civil services IAS exam from the most terror affected districts of Kashmir Valley. And you have seen this trend in the last few years. Every year you have 30 to 40 youngsters, class 12 pass outs from the terror affected districts qualifying IIT JEE exam and thus making it to IITs and NITs all over the country. Every year you have as many as 50. I think that about 2 years back when we were there for that all party delegation Valley, and the same day the result came out, and next morning I showed to everybody, because these coaching centers, they project photographs of all claiming, but that becomes a source of information. There were at least 50 who had qualified for the NEET, which is an all India entrance test for medical colleges. So these children are highly conscious of the enormous avenues in contemporary India, in Modi's India, which are awaiting them. They do not wish to miss the bus. It's just a handful few, and the other part is the names which you mentioned also stand exposed because these children are very scrutinizing, they are very investigative, they are very interrogative, they would not even trust their parents if something is said to them without conviction. They have seen how these handful of leaders, which are being mentioned time and again, first made sure that their own children were lodged in safe havens, getting education in the best of the institutions across the country and abroad, and then in the best of job placements in the corporate sector and shamelessly even in the civil services, though they do not subscribe wholly or partly to the Constitution of India, but make best use of it. Whereas they were pushing the neighbor's children or the poor man's children to become stone pelters. And I think one generation lost out to that. So this 3rd generation, and during 30 years of terrorism, has now begun to realize the kind of duplicity and kind of bluff to which they were held to. So I think that is the difference. First we have to understand that, and then we can move forward.
Sir, you have discredited the politicians who are until now representing or claiming to represent the people of Kashmir. So who will represent people of Kashmir politically?
No, see, the time of 8%, 10% voter turnout beneficiaries is over, A. And you can record these words which is being told. B, the time of dynastism is over. C, this is third generation of Kashmiris. And they will come out and then decide their course of future. Of course, anybody is in a democracy welcome to prove his credit. So it would not be right for me that they are discredited. All these names which you mentioned, they should come forward in an open atmosphere, again contest, and let them decide their future. But they cannot hold the country and Jammu Kashmir to ransom by saying that only we are the master political players and we will determine the future. So, as I said, as the time passes, this wheel of the shroud of fear is out, and as I said, the youth is highly aspirational. We would have a scenario undergoing a change on its own, and we would come across, regardless of whether these players are there or not, because they'll also have to go through the test of the popular ballot, which is not happening in the kind of atmosphere which has prevailed over there.
So when could we expect elections to happen?
We in the Modi government do not interfere in the working of the constitutional institutions, be that Election Commission of India or be that CBI. Maybe your mind is conditioned by the UPA because you were covering home at that time also. We don't do that. You could ask this to the Election Commission. But as far as a Karyakarta or a worker of BJP is concerned, we are at 24 into 7 into 365 party. We are not that election season party, nor do we start visiting temples during election. So we are working round the clock like you guys are doing. So we are ready for any election, any time, even if it is announced today.
You said the common man walking in the streets of Srinagar today is rejoicing. Then how come most of the images that are emanating from the valley are either like empty streets or stone pelters? Like we don't see any images of rejoicement that have come out till now. And if there's actual rejoicement, then why are they under clampdown? Why can't they share their joy with each other?
See, the restrictions have been put precisely for the same reason for which you have expressed your apprehension. It has been, these restrictions have been put precisely for the reason that the right-thinking citizen could live to rejoice, would not be allowed to die before rejoicing. Because Pakistan and the sponsors of terrorism are always up to mischief, particularly on these momentous occasions. And this is not this time. Again, I mean, because in our subconscious mind we have Article 370 abrogation. It's been happening. So this is happening year after year, regardless of 370 or not 370, even when 370, if 370 was the safeguard for this, then why was this happening for 30 years? Do you have an answer for this? And if all the precautions were taken only for abrogation of, because the abrogation of 370, then why the earlier governments, because we came in only in 2014, why the earlier governments run by Congress or its allies or supported by Congress were imposing these restrictions in spite of having 370 in place? So, this is in the interest of the safety of the common man in an atmosphere or a vulnerable situation where the mischief mongers sponsored by Pakistan always find it easier to find soft targets.
Many of your answers about why the restrictions, why the lockdown, why the arrests and detentions, you point to these things having been done earlier by Congress regimes. So surely for a government that cannot be either a moral or a political argument to say that it has been done before. That's one. The second is that when you keep saying also that we should delink the current situation from Article 370. But why should we do that? Because that is also the way in which this lockdown is unprecedented, that you have taken a very consequential decision for the people of the valley while keeping them under lock and key.
I did not say do link, and I agree with you. Why should you? But you should not see the exercise of restrictions have been imposed through the prism of Article 370 abrogation. That is precisely what I said. Please note these words. There is a proverb in English language, two wrongs don't make one right. So that is what you should have said to counter me. Now I'll tell you what I'll tell. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying what is happening is the ideal situation. What I am saying is that it is unfair to hurl all this criticism on the present government on the basis of what is happening. Because if you did so, then you have to check the records and see, did you do so in the earlier years? Did you make so much of noise when the restrictions were imposed on the Independence Day of 2018, on the Republic Day of 2019? So in your case also the same rule would apply. Two wrongs don't make one wrong. So you cannot have different standards. So that is why I am saying, let's not have a biased mind in looking at it. I am not saying that if Congress has done a wrong, we are a party with a difference, we claim so. We will never repeat the wrongs of the Congress. We are actually correcting. This abrogation of Article 370 is a correction of the wrong course taken by the Congress party. So we are on a corrective course. But please do not judge us on the basis of this last 1 week, because if you do so, then you would have to judge yourself by asking yourself, what was your response in the preceding years on the same occasions or similar occasions?
To get rid of our subconscious prism of 370 and look at the current restrictions, can we then surmise that, say, Mehbooba Mufti, a recent ally of the BJP, is a security threat? Is that why they're under preventive retention? Or Omar Abdullah? That's the first question. Former chief ministers, do they present a security threat vis-a-vis the situation in Kashmir? The second is, the legal precedent that's been set with the abrogation. The 371, which is, and its sections which are in place in the Northeast. What we've done now is set a central appointee, the governor, can stand in for the elected assembly, which in terms of the larger federal principles, many would argue is problematic. And second is, if there are justified fears in every state now, especially places where there are special provisions, that a governor can be appointed for any reason, perhaps legitimate reasons, and then stand in for an elected assembly.
Again, we'll have to correct our mindset. I may be a security threat without carrying a gun. So that doesn't mean that they are carrying a gun. There have been detentions in Jammu region also. Again, our mind is, hooked on to these 2-3 names, which is our tragedy, not there, because it helps them. It helps them thrive, survive, flourish, because we are chanting their name whole day, then at 9 o'clock even debating their names. You have equal number of detentions happened in the other region, in Jammu region also. The call is to be taken by security agency. I will not hasten an absolute response because that's not my prerogative and not my mandate. Depending upon their inputs, I would again say, whenever they feel that there is going to be some kind of an activity or some kind of a statement or some kind of provocation, they take these decisions. So they must have had inputs enough to take these decisions. And it's not been done only in the case of 2 or 3 individuals.
आपने रिप्रेजेंटेशन की बात की, पहले तो 7-8% के वोट पे बन जाते थे, तो अब जो इलेक्शन होगा उसमें आपके हिसाब से क्या वोटिंग परसेंटेज जो है वो लेजिटिमाइज करेगी इलेक्शन?
You are assuming that demography will change because there is terrorism today and it will disallow others to enter into. But we are very optimistically visualizing a scenario where the terrorism is on its way out. And I've been saying this for quite a few months, that this is the last phase of militancy because of the decisive action with clarity, candidness and conviction which has been initiated in the recent times by the Modi government. The terrorists, their perpetuators, their supporters are feeling the heat. So once, because Kashmir Valley, if you are talking of that, is a land of unexplored potentials like Northeast. And once the potentials are realized, it will benefit the locals as much as the others. And as far as the demography part of it is concerned, there are safeguards in every state and every union territory. So I don't think that should be a concern. We are actually foreseeing a situation where peace will prevail, and I'm sure it will happen. And that will be the beginning of Jammu and Kashmir coming at par with the other parts of the country. The key voter today is the youth voter. And as I said, 70% is youth. He decides. Many of the channels were, talking in different tones and all those things. And I said after my result was declared, I said, if I could get a margin that high, it was possible because we have constructed bridges, beautiful projects, and we find youngsters even at 42-degree temperature in the afternoon taking selfies. I said, ये वोट उन्होंने डाला जो सेल्फियाँ खींचते थे 42 डिग्री 44, and we made this margin. So they may not have been motivated by any political party, they may not have been reached or even accessed by any political campaigner, but they have a mind of their own. And that is why nowadays we are witnessing 70% polling, 80% polling. Because, the youngster wants to express himself and doesn't wish to miss the tool of expression. So once, as I said, it's a wheel of fear which is spreading. Once that is away, automatically the voting percentage will go up. And as far as dynastism is concerned, otherwise also it has outlived its life in India. You begin from the first dynasty to the last dynasty, to the emulators of the first dynasty. It is, if a dynasty is still sustaining in any part of India, it is because of some anomaly there, or the alternatives not having been allowed to flourish. So that is the basis of my optimism about the times to come.